This evening, I would like to talk to you about welfare evangelism. It was about the year, I believe it was 1999. I was living in Temple Hills. And the brethren there, I was not working with the Temple Hills Church. I was working with brethren in Arlington, but they needed somebody to stay there so people knew that, there's somebody there in the church. So I was living there, and they said, look, many people call, please answer the phone, and whatever assistance you can give it. If not, transfer, give us a call, and we will call them. No problem. Then one day I received a phone call from someone that lives somewhere in the area. And he was requesting help, financial help. And I asked, what's the situation? And he said, well, my situation is this. I will begin working on Monday. This was Wednesday. I need to feed my family. Oh, okay. I said, well, that's a good sign, Then I said, okay, let's meet at the grocery store, and I will buy the things that you need, but the only things that I cannot buy for you is cigarettes and liquor. Okay? And I thought that the person was going to say, yes, please, I really need to feed my family. But his question was, what kind of a Christian are you? That's what he said. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, any church that I called when I said I need to feed my family, they said, oh, come and get the money. But you don't want to give me no money. I said, no, I will not give you no money. I will pay for the groceries that you need until you start working. That I can help you. Nope. He said, you are not a Christian. I said, look, we had so many bad experiences that we don't want to repeat that. So it's either this way or you have to call another church. And he kept arguing with me. So I realized that he probably had called every other church in the area, and he had already gotten what he wanted, or they knew him already and they were not giving him anything. So I stood firm and I said, no, we meet at the grocery store or else I'm sorry. And he said, no, I want you to give me the money. And I said, I will not give you no money. So anyway, I ended up doing nothing. Actually, he called me back and he said a few words that I'm not going to repeat. But the fact is that there are people in the world that they are really in need. The question is, how can we, as Christians, conscious Christians, we can identify who really needs help and who doesn't? Okay? Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 11, God said, for the poor shall never cease out of the land. Therefore I command thee, saying, thou shalt open thy hand wide unto thy brother, to thy poor, and to thy needy in thy land. One thing this Bible verse tells us is that we will always have what? Poor. We will always have poverty, okay? And what does God say afterward? He didn't say, I counsel thee. No, he said, I commanded thee. This is a command, okay? What is the command? Open what? Your hands wide unto whom? Your brother, the poor, the needy. Where? In the land. Meaning those that were near to where people is, okay? Or where we are. So with this thought in mind, governments and the churches, they have created something called welfare, right? And the definition of welfare, according to the dictionary, is this. It's a financial or other assistance given to those in poverty or need. It's also called public what? Relief. Okay. This concept, this is what the welfare is. Financial or other assistance given, okay? So, based on what we read from Deuteronomy, and there are many other Bible verses I will share. I will share these thoughts throughout the next 2 Wednesdays as well, because I'm going to have these 3 Wednesdays to share with you, and will be based on this. The church has a work to do, right? We read it. God commanded us to help open wide my brother, the poor, the needy, right? And we have plenty of these kind of people, whether there is in the church or out of the church. But the pen of inspiration gives a better definition of what welfare is. And I want for you to pay attention to what it says. It says, real charity helps men to help what? Themselves. Wait a minute. What is he talking about? If one comes to our door and asks for food, we should not turn him away hungry. His poverty may be the result of misfortune, but true beneficence means more than mere gifts. So, think about this, okay? Real charity first helps men to help themselves. So it works both ways. The one that gives and the one that receives, okay? Then it goes and it describes, if one comes to our door and asks for food, what shall we do? Don't turn him away hungry. That means we need to help. Why? Because his poverty may be the result of misfortune. What can we consider misfortune?
Lost a job.
Lost a job. What else? Sickness. What else? Death. Death of the husband. Maybe he was the breadwinner, right? Okay. All right. Any misfortune. He not only robbed, but he got beaten, right? To the point of, excuse me?
The car broke down.
Yes. There are many, many instances, okay? But then it says, but true beneficence means more than mere gift. So it's not enough for us just to give. It means a genuine interest in the welfare of others. What does it mean by genuine interest?
It's contrasting with something that's not real, not true.
Okay,
So it's real interest.
let me use this example, okay? I hope I don't get in trouble myself. There is charity, okay? The Bible speaks about charity, right? Or welfare, or giving to the poor. Okay, that comes from the church. But in the world, there's also some that are called philanthropists. Okay, and they do it for other reasons. You know, they get tax breaks, you know, when they give so much money and so forth. I'm not saying that all of them do it for just for showing or for getting the breaks in the tax, you know, with their. But the great majority do that for that reason, right? But then our interest in the welfare of others should go beyond that, beyond just helping them, beyond just providing a relief for the moment of distress that they have. Notice the next sentence. It says here, we should seek to understand the needs of the poor and distressed and to give them the help that will benefit them most. I believe one of you mentioned, okay, when we talked about misfortune, somebody may have lost a job. What would be the best way for us to help that person?
Find a new job.
To find a new job, right? Visiting in their home. I remember one time, one of our ministers, he was giving a seminar to us don't remember exactly what we were discussing, but he gave us an example. He said that at the local church where he was, one day they received a phone call. And it was this man, and he needed help. But he said, oh, I don't have a job. I lost my job, and I need to feed my family. But this brother could hear the TV going in the back. And so he asked him, says, yeah, sure, we can help you, but how, can I come and visit you? And the man said, sure, you can come. No problem. So guess what? He went to visit him. When he got there, he saw there were 3 vehicles parked in front of the house, in the driveway of the house. The house was decent. The TV was going. And, he didn't see signs of distress, real distress. So when the man asked him, he said, so, yes, this is my need. He began enumerating different things, how they were behind so many months on the mortgage. They haven't paid the electric bill. They haven't paid the water and the trash collection. And, it's the whole list. But then the brother said, okay, can I ask you for a favor? He said, can you tell me, is anybody working here in the house? Oh, yes, it's my wife. Oh, your wife works, and you are out of work? Yes. Okay. How long? A couple months. Okay. What kind of work does your wife do? He said, oh, she's a nurse. So the brother was like, wait a minute. If she's a nurse, nurses earn good money. He said, is there a way for me to know how much does she make every month? Oh, and he was very open, yeah, she makes this much money. And so he said, okay, she makes this much money, and then said, and your mortgage is so much, your water bill is so much, this is so much, phone is so much. By the time he finished, he said, you should have around this much money left. What's going on with this money? And the person, it was like, oh, he said, yes, we should have that much money. What's going on with this money? So anyway, to make the long story short, this family got interested in our church. They became members of our church. Yes, and some of you know the family. I will not tell you. Okay, but yes, they were having a difficulty understanding what were their priorities and where the money was going. Once they realized that even in one income they could make it, it was easier for them to understand. And then, of course, once he began working, there were two incomes, and that was much, much better. He understood that. So, yes, we need to be wise, how to help the people, because it's not necessarily always money, not necessarily always food, but, people sometimes, they will not open up to you. So that's another difficulty. But we need to be wise. The next sentence says, to give thought and time and personal effort costs far more than merely to give money, but it is the truest charity. So it's not just for us to give money. Yes, there are emergencies, there is no question. But, we need to examine the cases, and based on the worthiness of the case, then we should be able to give. Okay? And it's very interesting because the early Christians demonstrated great liberality toward the poor, especially towards their own brethren. And we have several examples. In Acts chapter 4, verse 34 to 37 says, neither was there any among them that lacked, for as many as were possessors of lands or houses sold them, and brought the prices of the things that were sold, and laid them down at the apostles' feet. And distribution was made unto every man according as he had need. And Joseph, who by the apostles was surnamed Barnabas, which is being interpreted the son of consolation, a Levite, and of the country of Cyprus, having land, sold it, and brought the money, and laid it at the apostles' feet. This was in the last Sabbath Bible lesson with this example. So, yes, the brethren were very much into giving because there were needs right there and then at the church. Many were being persecuted by their own families, by their own brethren, the Jewish brethren. They were persecuting them. Why? Because they have accepted Jesus, so they became destitute. So others that had means came to the rescue. Great example, right? Same book, chapter 11, verse 27 to 30 says, "And in these days came prophet from Jerusalem unto Antioch, and there stood up one of them named Agabus, and signified by the Spirit that there should be great dearth throughout all the world, which came to pass in the day of Claudius Caesar. Then the disciples, every man according to his ability, determined to send relief unto the brethren which dwelt in Judea, which also they did, and sent it to the elders by the hands of Barnabas and Saul." This says Saul and Paul. Okay, all right. So even brethren in other places, they saw the need, and they sent who? Barnabas and Paul. But it came up because of the prophet Agabus was the one that said, this is coming up, and we need to be aware of these things. But notice this, though, that it is very clear that this was a relief. And it also was given to whom? To the elders. To be properly what? Distributed. So this thing needs to be done in a very wise way. 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 1 through 4 says, "Moreover, brethren, we do you to wit of the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia, how that in a great trial of affliction the abundance of their joy and their deep poverty abounded unto the riches of their liberality. For to their power I bear record, yea, and beyond their power they were willing of themselves, praying us with much entreaty that we will receive the gift and take upon us the fellowship of the ministering to the saints." So even in their poverty, they were not selfish, but they gave of what they had. And they gave them to the brethren, to the ministers back then, and they entreated them to take the money. Can you imagine? The poor people, they were entreating the brethren, take the help and take it to our brethren that are suffering. But what they had, they gave. Tell me, did God bless them? Yes, they did. Yes. So, and throughout the New Testament, you will see how this issue of helping the poor is very much stressed. Paul, in particularly, was engaged in helping the poor Christians. In Galatians chapter 2, verses 9 through 10, we find that he says, "And when James, Cephas, and John, who seemed to be the pillars, perceived the grace that was given unto me, they gave to me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship, that we should go unto the heathens, and they unto the circumcision. Only they would that we should remember the poor, the same which I also was forward to do." So the apostles themselves, they reminded each other of what? Not to forget whom? The poor. And I'm sure that it was not only the poor that needed material things, but also the poor in spirit. Both go hand in hand. In 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verses 1 through 4, we find that Paul instructed the churches how to do this. Order is very important. Okay? 1 Corinthians 16, 1 through 4 says, "Now concerning the collections for the saints, as I had given order to the churches of Galatia, even so do ye. Upon the first day of the week, let every one of you lay by him in a store, as God has prospered him, that there be no gatherings when I come. And when I come, whomsoever ye shall approve by your letters, them will I send to bring your liberality unto Jerusalem. And if it be meet that I go also, they shall go with me. So Paul told them how to do it. You know, on the first day of the week, they should gather their offerings to help the poor as God has prospered them, and then there will be no need to collect then and there. Because it's difficult, when a call comes unexpectedly, what happens? We give of what we have, but if we could help more, it would be different. That was the thought that Paul was trying to bring. In Romans chapter 15, verse 25 to 26, the apostle accompanied such a collection. Notice what it says here. But now I go unto Jerusalem to minister unto the saints, for it has pleased them of Macedonia and Achaia to make a certain contribution for the poor saints which are at Jerusalem. So it seemed like Jerusalem they had a lot of needy people. Okay? So we can truly say that the early church, they remember what? The poor. The poor. Even Jesus, when he was ministering for 3.5 years, he brought this fact to the disciples. In Luke chapter 6, verse 20, he said, and he lifted up his eyes on his disciples and said, bless ye the poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. So he tried to remind them that there was a need among them, among those that were following Christ. In James chapter 2, verse 5, also the brother of our Lord Jesus said what? Hearken, my beloved brethren, had not God chosen the poor of this world rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom which he had promised to them that love him? So the thought was continuously brought up that we need to do what? They needed to help the poor. And the New Testament, there is where we have many great examples for us Christians that live today in the 21st century. Next week, we are going to talk about understanding the poor and understanding poverty. Okay? So may God help us to understand that there is a work for us to do. Among many things, we should not forget what? Our brethren, the poor, and the needy. Because needs there abound in many different ways. So may God help us that we may allow the Holy Spirit to touch our hearts, to open our minds, and to be wise. When the call for need comes from, doesn't matter where it comes from, that we should be wise, that we should learn how to collect and also how to give and make sure that the things are done in order. This is why the Barnabas and Saul went, not only to give it to the elders, but to see that the things were done in decency and in order.